average consensus is about 3 weeks. And I think a piece of that is really not even super brain related, but it is very behaviorally related, which is we have to kind of force it into our schedule and our routine and make space for it. And it's very easy to pick something up for a few days, a week or so, but not really find a rhythm or a routine that can become consistent. And so I think a lot of the research on getting a habit to be a new and consistent part of life has a lot to do with it behaviorally integrating into our daily routine in a way that it just becomes consistent, like getting up, brushing your shower, brushing your hair, taking a shower. From a neuroscience perspective, I think there is that component of understanding how our day-to-day structure and routine, which people don't think about it often, but we're kind of on this conveyor belt from the time we begin school. Really, external structure around what our day is like. Wake up, go to school, come home, do homework, eat dinner, go to bed, repeat, or wake up, go to work, etc. Right? There's a real behavioral conveyor belt that comes from the outside. And so generating something new into that takes time, and it takes intention. We have to do it. It's very this is part of why people benefit so much from external accountability, like a personal trainer, is that having an appointment, having someone else to hold you accountable, creates structure, and it's that same kind of external impetus that is, that someone else tells us what time we have to be at work, right? So it's that same structure. So that's very behavioral. I think from a neuroscience perspective, it's understanding things like whenever your brain is learning something new, there's an arc we go through where you have to engage parts of the frontal lobe so that you're oriented, it's important to you, so it's salient, and you're actively attuned to it and working to learn that new thing, whether it's new information or a new habit. There's a classic study about, you're in a country like the US where you have to look a certain direction for cars and then the other direction before you cross the street. Then you go to a country like the UK, you have to relearn that. And when you're doing the relearning, you get this frontal lobe activity. It's much more salient because you don't want to get hit by a car. You're paying a lot more of attention. But once you learn it, then you no longer need those higher level frontal regions of your brain. It becomes much more habitual, much more part of you. And it's very similar to that 3 week arc of building in a habit, that we have to pay attention, we have to put forth effort, but trust that along the way it will become instinctual, it will become natural.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, how you're mentioning about, things like, brushing your teeth, showering, we kind of have these routines, and it's almost like, you do it without even thinking. And that's kind of how these changes really have to be integrated to make sure that they are actually lasting, and that, you can measure, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later and say, okay, I can see the progress that's been made from sticking to it, versus, trying to every day, force or try to motivate yourself into something that you really don't want to do, or things of that nature. So uh, definitely practical. Thank you. Um, so yeah, so that's really good for people that, if you really have this serious motivation at the beginning and you want to make these changes, that's really great. Everybody should want to better their health. But sometimes certain people have physical limitations that may make that more difficult than someone else who doesn't have these. So maybe we can get into a couple of those. So the first one is, how do you start a good exercise regimen when you have a bad back? So this is actually pretty interesting because, this is affecting a lot of people, whether it's an injury or, a degenerative condition. And the question, the asker says, I recently became more active, but even walking aggravates my back and causes me pain. I experience a lot of setbacks when I do anything too strenuous. So how can someone adapt to a situation like that to still achieve their goals?
Yeah, as you say, Jasmine, that's a very common problem, isn't it? Back pain, and indeed, the first step that I would be thinking of in the management of this would be an accurate diagnosis. And certainly, the gold standard for diagnostics within spinal pathology or spinal disease is an MRI scan, because first you need to know what the problem is. And actually, if you do have chronic back pain over a 6 to 8 week period, that is an indication for an MRI scan in anybody, in a child or adult, because sometimes it could be a sinister pathology such as a tumor or a spinal stenosis or a disc herniation. So the first way to tackle this exercise issue is to gain an accurate diagnosis. Now, that might be seeking help from your a family doctor with a special interest in musculoskeletal medicine, or indeed a referral to a spinal surgeon. But the first thing is to understand the anatomy and the structural problem as to why indeed you do have back pain. And only then can we then work on the exercise regime that is suitable to the individual. And this should be tailored to each individual, and sometimes even dialing in allied health care professionals such as physiotherapists, osteopaths, chiropractic, strength and conditioning, and yoga and Pilates. All of these things can help with core stability. And traditionally, people have been told, well, just stick to low impact activities such as swimming or cycling. But it really depends on the individual's pathology and what is going on at an anatomic level, because some exercises for some people are easier in a seated position, such as cycling, and others prefer walking. And sometimes swimming can aggravate the spinal or the pathology or the back pain. So we start with number one, diagnostics, and then take it from there. But it's really understanding the nature of the pain, and then having a personalized or a tailored approach to each individual for their exercise regime. And I think that's really important. I think we see too often people going down the route of exercise intervention without actually having any background knowledge of what is going on in their body and with their anatomy. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's really important that we understand that before doing any further harm.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, it's coming back to that, the personalized approach, knowing exactly what the condition is, what your limitations and kind of range of motion is, and then trying to fit it into that, rather than just kind of using these broad strokes of, oh yeah, I'm going to do low impact, or, something generic where, it's your body is very unique and your condition is very unique as well. So yeah, thanks.
That's right. And indeed, even if the MRI scan of the spine is normal, well, that's great news. Because it shows there's no anatomic or structural pathological issue with the spine, which is fantastic, because then you can reassure individuals that they can get on with their exercise and do no harm. But the MRI is certainly the gold standard, and I would recommend that.
The MRI, right? And then, so you're saying if there's no actual pathology, then it becomes more of a pain management thing than an actual limitation. Okay,
yes, absolutely.
Great. So that, yes, there is definitely hope out there. So stick with it and discover what it actually is. I know sometimes that can be kind of a long journey. So I guess let's get into the mental health aspect. So what role does mental health play in setting such goals? Because we have our physical, but then we have our mindset, mentality, and all those other aspects. Some people may have anxiety, depression, other types of conditions like that.
Yeah, I'd like to answer the question a couple different ways. One, I think it's so common if you ask a random person what their New Year's resolutions are. So many times it's get back in the gym, or it's something physical, which is I absolutely thrilled to hear. But I think it's also important to set goals for mental health and overall quality of life. So I think on the one hand, it's important to set goals for finding, as John mentioned, time for better sleep, time for meditation or just relaxation, other kinds of, whatever it is that brings someone joy, or potentially if there's something more serious and distressing going on, in the same way that you could commit to going to the gym, you could commit to seeking, professional support from a psychologist, a therapist, a psychiatrist. So I think setting mental health goals is really important. I also think broadly as human beings, we generate a massive amount of meaning from aiming, having goals, seeking purpose. And so picking a goal and working towards it, whatever that goal may be, I think has its own really positive effect on mental well-being, because it's this upward spiral. If I set a goal, it was hard, I worked towards it, I succeeded, or I'm in the process of succeeding, I get to feel confident, good about myself. And it's really emotionally reinforcing in a lot of ways. I think on the other side, things like depression can have symptoms like it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. You can be kind of apathetic, or it's difficult to generate energy. Getting started on something new can be hard. Or if you're anxious, there might be a lot of apprehension and this kind of internal emotional blocks you have to get over in order to begin to achieve the goal that you've set. And I think, on the one hand, simply being aware of that, awareness breeds a lot of agency. So being aware of what's coming up for you. Is it anxiety, and can you label what it is you're worried will happen? Or is it low energy, and can you think about the things you might be able to do to change that, which would ultimately help you get out the door to the gym or towards the goal that you're working towards? I think being aware, again, insight really does breed agency. And then addressing those things, again, seeking professional support and finding ways to see the impact of the mental health difficulties on, of course, your overall daily life, but also your ability to achieve those goals. And I think we talked about this in a different talk, but there's a strong relationship between mental well-being and physical health. So the example I always give is, there's some very clear research that shows that anxiety and depression have a strong relationship between how successful someone's cancer treatment is. So if someone is clinically anxious or clinically depressed, they're less likely to respond well to chemotherapy, for example. But if you treat that anxiety, treat that depression, their likelihood of responding to chemotherapy and treating their cancer goes way up. So really appreciating that the mind and the body work strongly together, and anything you can do to support the body will benefit the mind. Anything you do to support the mind will benefit the body. And it really isn't just kind of a woo-woo-y idea. There's a massive amount of research behind that relationship. And so kind of setting those goals together, or being aware of how those the mental well-being and the physical goals are going to work together or undercut each other, is really important.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for those insights. I mean, that's definitely key. You have to have the right mindset, mentality, and sound mental health in order to actually achieve these goals. I think a lot of time that's forgotten. In terms of you could be feeling one way today. Okay, I'm motivated to do it, and then you wake up tomorrow, and that whole mindset totally changes. So yeah, definitely good to always remember that and keep that as a focus as part of health as well. And I mean, technically the brain is an organ, so it is kind of physical in a sense as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess like kind of tied to that, sleep is a big thing. We all know that if you're not getting good sleep, that's also affecting your mental health, physical health, overall outlook, and everything. So the next question is, what role does sleep play in achieving health-related resolutions, and how can we improve our sleep habits? So that's a pretty big one.
Yeah,
I'm happy to go ahead, John.
Sorry, go for it, Taylor.
Well, we can tag team it too if you like. So I think we can all, personally relate to the impact of almost no sleep on the quality of the next day, how hard it is to think, how hard it is to have energy and move. So using an extreme example, sleep is the foundation of being able to, a foundation of the ability to achieve goals. When we're sleeping, the brain is doing a lot of really incredible things, many of which will help you achieve your goal. So the part of your brain involved in learning and remembering new information is rehearsing the things that you learned during the day, not just information, kind of what someone told you in an AMA, for example, but also the habits, the places you went, if you navigated to a new location. So it's rehearsing all of the things you learned that day so that you maintain that new learning over time. So giving yourself the ability to sleep really well will help be a part of that, building that new habit that we've discussed. There's also a system called the glymphatic system. So when you're sleeping in slow wave sleep, the space between your brain cells gets bigger, and the system flushes out kind of the debris, the detritus from the day. And if you're not getting enough slow wave sleep, that's not getting cleared out well enough. Kind of think about the heart and the plaques build up, which can lead to a heart attack. And if you had a system that could clean that out every night, but you had to get good sleep, I think we'd all be really motivated to get good sleep to kind of clear out, the pathways to our heart. It's the same idea. You're cleaning out the pathways in your brain. So you're maintaining cognitive proficiency that way. You're improving mental well-being that way. The relationship between sleep and things like anxiety and depression is very, very strong. And as is the relationship between sleep and post-traumatic growth and positive meaning and positive emotional well-being factors as well. So I think there's a whole lot to that. And in terms of sleeping, really well. And then, John, I'll kick it to you. The research shows that something called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is actually more effective at helping people fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and get better quality of sleep than any pill. And that's rooted kind of in the idea of sleep hygiene, which is, again, very behavioral, right? But by that, I concretely mean behaviors you do. So part of it is that you should only be in bed to sleep or be intimate. You shouldn't read, you shouldn't watch TV, you shouldn't play on your phone, because what you're doing is you're training your body and your mind to be awake when you're in bed. But if the only thing you do in bed is sleep or be intimate, then you're training your body that bed is where you sleep. Kind of like the classic Pavlov's dog. You trained him to drool with the bell. You're training your body to sleep in bed. And the piece that people generally don't love, I don't either. It's not a lot of, it can be very challenging, but it's totally worthwhile and you don't have to do it for that long, is if you're a person who has a hard time falling asleep, and or if you wake up in the middle of the night and it's hard to fall back asleep, you need to pick a time that's about 20 or 25 minutes. And if you get into bed and you're not asleep in 20 or 25 minutes, or if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're not back asleep in 20 or 25 minutes, you need to get out of bed. Don't go do something that wakes you up. Don't go for a run. Don't turn the TV on or blast music. Go sit, relax, do something that's calming. And then go, when you feel like you might fall back asleep, go back to bed. And then rinse and repeat. If you're not asleep in 20 or 25 minutes, do it again. And in this way, what you're doing is you're really reinforcing and retraining the body and the mind that you sleep in bed. And you, again, if you kind of commit to this, and of course there are other little things like don't drink a lot of fluids before bed, minimize caffeine and screen time right before bed, other things that will help you be sleepy. But if you do this, you'll train your body to fall asleep. And again, you'll fall asleep quicker, stay asleep longer, and get better quality of sleep.
Thank you. Yeah, the really practical tips. Actually, when that the research came out about the glymphatic system and how it clears all of the junk that accumulates during the day and like actually makes you refreshed, it just made so much sense, and it was like fascinating because it's almost something we intuitively knew, but now we have the hard research and science to back it. There actually is some cleansing process going on in your brain as you sleep. And yeah, you were mentioning the keeping the room set up for that way. I know most of us are kind of on our phones up until the moment we're sleeping, putting it under the pillow kind of a thing, and that's definitely not the best for sleep. So yeah, those small changes can definitely make a difference. John, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to recommend a good Christmas read, actually, a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, who's actually an English guy now in the States, but that's a really good read. And he talks a lot about the things that Taylor's just mentioned in terms of sleep hygiene and really getting that environment correct, trying to get a solid and consistent sleep schedule, so trying to go to bed and wake up the same time on a daily basis. To make sure the temperature, talks a lot about cool temperatures in the bedroom to sleep well and being in a comfortable situation. And on top of that, I just wanted to mention what you do during the day as well, because there's a lot of research to say that if you've been active from a physical exercise point of view during the day, you're much more likely to sleep well. So it's certainly related to what you're doing during the day as well. But that's certainly the text that I can recommend. Why We Sleep, Matthew Walker.
Awesome, thanks. So yep, got a book recommendation there. So yeah, improve your sleep. That's definitely, if we're talking about a resolution, I think that's a great one to start with, to kind of cascade into others. So let's, I guess, get into some substances and supplements. So we can start on the supplement side. Are there specific vitamins or supplements that can support common New Year's resolutions like weight loss, energy boost, and improved focus? I know this is kind of an area, again, where it's more personalized. Some people might be deficient in some things, and then there's some kind of other supplements that are more of an extra boost rather than being about filling a deficiency. So what are your takes on that?
Yeah, I'll kick that one off. Thanks, Jasmine. And just going back to the MRI scan situation, I think the same could be said for vitamins and supplements in terms of it's important to know your own baseline. So if in doubt, then speak to your medical practitioner, your family doctor, arrange a blood profile to make sure that you don't have any pathological deficiencies before just blindly taking supplements, of which there are thousands, and it's a multi-billion-dollar business, isn't it, globally? And the other top tip, as well as the book that I gave you, is a common website called regimen.com, which takes a deep dive into the evidence base behind each supplement, because there's always hearsay, isn't there, with your friends and family and colleagues about which supplements work and which don't. But regimen.com really looks at the medical text and literature and looks at each one on an individual basis. So I would certainly recommend considering a blood test and really doing some research into those supplements before you start taking them. Now, in terms of weight loss, I think we would agree the most sensible strategy would be to look at the calorific intake and output in terms of your calorific intake versus exercise. And that would be the first thing to address in terms of your nutrition. But there are certain supplements that are well known, such as probiotics, fiber supplements, linoleic acid, even green tea or lemon tea, which are found to have certain weight loss properties or even antioxidant effects. In terms of energy boosts, it seems to be the vitamin B complexes that are important. So vitamins B1, 2, 3, 6 and 9. And likewise, vitamin B12 and iron. And certainly iron deficiency, anemia is something that should be excluded. And if necessary, consider taking iron supplements. Other supplements to boost energy would be potentially magnesium, which plays an important role in energy production and also muscle function, and caffeine, which again needs to be taken into context and with your sleep hygiene, as we spoke about earlier, and potentially not taking caffeine after 12 noon because of its long half-life. And in terms of improved focus, there's good evidence for omega-3 fatty acids such as DHA or EPA. These certainly support brain health and have been shown to improve both memory and focus. Vitamin D is important for focus also. This has been linked to cognitive impairment if people are impaired or deficient in any way. And certainly two of the supplements that I take on a daily basis are omega-3 and vitamin D. And then there are other supplements such as L-theanine or L-carnitine, which have also been shown to improve focus. But my advice would be to make sure you understand your own baseline and do some thorough research into those supplements. And as Jasmine said earlier, make sure it's a personalized approach to what you need, because what you need as an individual may be completely different to what your friend or family member or colleague needs. So thorough research needed.
Absolutely. I want to echo everything John said. And I would add that I think there are burgeoning companies as well as primary care doctors who can run a blood panel. And that blood panel can often be helpful for guiding some of the choices about vitamins and supplements. And having that baseline on where you are right now from an imaging and an MRI and a blood perspective is paramount. As both John and Jasmine said, the personalized approach is kind of a must. I would just simply add that B12 from a cognitive perspective is highly, highly important. When people come in to an emergency room with delirium or presenting like they have dementia, B12 panel is one of the first things they look at, because low B12 at an extreme can make you present as though you have dementia. It's reversible, very, very rapidly reversible. But so that's a very strong one. And then in the regulatory, approach to this varies by country, but there's also kind of this burgeoning or expanding space of peptides. And so for both cognitive function and energy, there's this NAD pipeline. So there's NMN, NAD, and NR, which you can get in different routes of administration. Some people take them as a pill or a little squirt under your tongue. You can take them subcutaneously or get them in a vitamin IV. So people are really kind of interested in, and there's more research coming out now about those, as well as some other things like glutathione that have been shown to be helpful for cognitive function. Many of these, by the way, including many of the ones that John described, such as the omega-3 fatty acids and the vitamin D, also have a really strong, not just both a today, I feel better, I have more energy, I have more focus, but also a longevity effect. They're good for health span.
Great. Yeah. So it's definitely coming back to that, because there's a difference between there's a lot of supplements that are scientifically backed, so we know that they are safe, effective, all that thing, but it still comes back down to that individual profile. Getting the testing to know where you are, because just because something is good in general doesn't mean it's what you need. So it's more incentive to, or just highlights the need for us to get our Reju system live, for people to be able to get these tests and and everything directly to them, so that they can actually know their baselines. I think a lot of people don't. Typically, you go to the doctor, they only kind of tell you if something is seriously wrong, but there's kind of more detailed, longevity, health span focused tests that indeed can show you a broader perspective of areas that you might just want to improve in general. Like most people are a little bit low on vitamin D. It may not be a critical low level, but it could be improved upon. So there's these little tweaks and optimizations that can be made that may be not known unless you actually have the right testing. Thanks for that. And so now we're going to go to, more of the the other side, where, in the holiday season, there can be a lot of partying, a lot of drinking. So for those who want to cut back on alcohol or other substances, are there evidence-based methods to make the transition easier? And who wants to take first?
Go for it, Taylor. I'll leave that one to the clever doctor, I think.
So I think there's a couple components to this. I think they're from, in the United States, we have kind of two really big modalities or camps for this. And I think that what we call them is different by different countries, but the two models are pretty consistent. There's the abstinence only model, which in the US, for example, we have Alcoholics Anonymous. And then there's what's called the harm reduction model. And the abstinence only model works for many people. It's very rewards based. You get a reward for being a day in, a reward for being a week in, a reward for being a year in. And for many, many people, that's super successful. And I think when we're trying to discontinue a substance like alcohol, then the goal is abstinence. And so getting into that as quickly as possible, especially if it's having a negative impact on your life, is really important. The thing that's different about the harm reduction model, and I'm not necessarily suggesting one is better than the other, but as John and Jasmine were describing a moment ago, the personalized approach, different things work for different people. The harm reduction model takes a slightly different approach in that it expects relapse. So it expects that people will be abstinent, but then fall back and use the substance again. And in the harm reduction model, rather than, for example, here in the US with Alcoholics Anonymous, if you relapse, you start back at zero. You start back at, okay, today is my first day. Today is my second day. And for many people, again, that works very well. But for other people, that doesn't work as well. And what the research has shown is that for some people, because the structure is that, oh, I'm at the beginning again. Then when they relapse significantly. And so the harm reduction model came from noticing that trend and shifted the focus to relapse happens. It's a normal part of the recovery process for many people. How do we minimize how long and how intense your relapse is? Thus the harm reduction. How do we get you back to abstinence as quickly as possible? And so whichever system works for you, kind of the core tenets are the same. The abstinence is the goal, if you relapse, to minimize shame, minimize self-criticism, and just get back to the safe abstinence as quickly as possible. And in doing so, kind of promoting and protecting your health and well-being in doing so. So those are kind of the two main things. I think the other piece that's really the abstinence only support systems have a little bit more successfully constructed is you can't underestimate the social component, the impact of social support, a social accountability. If someone to talk to about your journey, someone to get support, doing this and doing many of these things, like we talked about at the very beginning, in isolation is really hard. So having someone you can talk to, having someone who can help you through those harder days, or check in and just see how you're going, so that you're less alone. There's several new tobacco cessation projects that have come out of the U.S. They all are centered around even a small group, a 3 to 6 person group, and the research is really showing that you can kind of strip whatever technique they're using out, because that accounts for 10 to 20% of whether or not someone stops. But that group cohesion, having that support, seems to be a lion's share of whether or not someone stops using tobacco. So I think those are some of the really big pieces. And then also, just like we talked about, appreciating that it's very hard to go cold turkey on a substance, and you probably shouldn't on some substances, including alcohol. So engaging a doctor in the process to make sure you wean down in a way that is safe, because, for example, alcohol withdrawal can cause, in the extreme example, seizures. So you need to make sure you're getting off the medication appropriately and safely, and then have a kind of a habit, a routine, a ritual for a structure for building that new habit with social support.
Yeah, that's fantastic answer. Thanks, Sarah. I'll just add in a couple of practical tips there as well. That is, don't be afraid to use substitutions for whatever product is an issue. So, for instance, in the UK now, there is enormous boom in 0% alcohol or 0.5% alcohol. And in fact, a friend of mine who is a bar owner locally was only telling me last week that the biggest selling beer in his bar is a 0.5% beer, which is unbelievable. So certainly substituting alcohol for 0 or very low percent alcohol can be of huge benefit. And likewise with nicotine devices as well, there are so many nicotine supplements available now, whether it's patches or sprays. And that can certainly help with both of the treatment modalities that Taylor mentioned earlier on. So supplementation or substitution of those products in a safe and guided measure. But I would thoroughly agree in terms of the specialist help that is often required in these cases. So please don't be afraid to seek help when required.
Thank you. Yeah, I think an interesting part of it that you both touched on was the social element, because a lot of times with these, you may want to really improve your health, but things like drinking and smoking cigarettes are associated with hanging out with friends, social settings and everything. So yeah, things like having a zero, and I know there's some kind of alternative smoking products too. They don't seem to really work that effectively, but yeah, just being able to still adapt to that social climate, and keep some kind of support system and friends and enjoyment, I think is important there when trying to reduce the bad habits that are coming along with that setting as well. So yeah, definitely important. I've also seen some apps that are about reducing drinking, like trying to get the number down over time. So that's an interesting product out there as well. So I guess now we can jump into AI for a little bit, since we are Rejuve.ai. What role does technology such as AI-driven health solutions actually play in supporting our health goals and tracking our progress?
Do you want me to? Shall I start with this one, Taylor?
Please do.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, certainly this is very topical at the moment, and it really does address what we were talking about earlier in terms of personal health or lifestyle recommendations. And the AI algorithms essentially allow tailored plans to each individual, because the algorithms analyze individual data, whether it's activity levels or dietary habits, medical history, to provide you with a customized health plan. And certainly that is one of the main targets of Rejuve.ai within the user application. And also the AI systems allow adaptability. so that those goals and recommendations can be tracked, and progress can be measured, ensuring that people are up to date, and changes can be made where necessary. And with this, AI is also very important in terms of connecting and analysing our wearable devices. So whether it's a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, a Garmin device, tracking all of these biometrics like your step count, your heart rate, sleep patterns, etc. And this can all be linked in with these AI models, as well as data insights, and little tricks like gamification, for example. I'm quite an avid user of Strava, and that's a very clever application which basically boosts engagement within the app by almost engaging social competition with your friends and colleagues, looking at leaderboards, tracking your own data, etc. So yeah, certainly gamification is important as well. And in terms of safety mechanisms, many of these devices now operate almost like a warning system situation where AI-driven tools can identify potential health risks. A good example of this would be the ECG function on the Apple Watch, or the respiratory rate on the Whoop strap, which has been famously used to diagnose COVID in certain situations as well. So yeah, just in summary to that question, I would say the personalized health recommendations, the tracking and monitoring of progress, and emergency health monitoring and alerts would be the biggest sort of use cases of the AI models that I can describe.
Absolutely. I think that's, I'm not entirely sure what more to add to that. That was a really wonderful answer. I think the only thing that I would say that I think, Drew is doing a beautiful job of is one of the things I've been really excited to see is the integration of all these different data sources. The number of people I know who wear one of 8 or 10 different brands of quantified health wearable devices that's tracking these things and making inferences and suggestions. And each one I think is amazing. But having to go through and in one, just pivot from app to app to app to digest all that information is a little bit of a friction point. But two, it just seems like there's such a huge miss to not be making AI-based inferences on the integration of all of that data. I slept like this last night. I ate like that. My last blood panel said this. I told the app yesterday I was feeling this way, low anxiety, but also low energy. What can we do to synergize all that information? And I think that the ability of AI to find patterns, find meaning, find rich information in really large data sets that may or may not be apparent otherwise, and then generate useful information, useful insights, recommendations from that. That's one of these applications that I've been really excited to see getting driven forward. And the more kind of data we input to that, excuse me, the more rich and interesting and surprising those insights can be.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in exciting times when it comes to health insights and health optimization assisted by technologies. Yeah, we're able to combine multiple modes of data and be able to actually identify patterns to be able to give that positive feedback loop in a really continuous and live way. And that's kind of the goal of the Rejuve platform, really, is to be able to integrate all of those and be able to kind of follow you on that journey and be able to give that feedback in a way that will most optimize your health at that moment in time. And, all of these devices and AI technologies will definitely make that a lot easier. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. And, there's always kind of new wearables out there. And as the kind of competitive landscape develops, everyone adds new features and all of that. So yeah, definitely more to come there. So we're kind of getting close to the end here. So I think maybe we can end with maybe your top tip. We've been talking a lot about health optimization heading into the new year. So what is the one thing that you can do to make sure that any health goal that you set for the next year that you can look back at the end and actually be like, yep, I kept that one. So yeah, I guess that.
I would say, well, two really. I touched on it at the start of this AMA, and that is to set realistic goals and to monitor and track your progress. And I think, as Taylor said, with the modern applications now, whether it's Rejuve, whether it's Garmin, whatever it may be, but try and monitor your progress, because by doing that, you will see the differences and you will see the rewards, and it will encourage you to do more. So realistic goals and monitoring that progress would be my top tip.
And I agree with John so much that if it's okay, I'll just add to that. I think that one of the things that can be challenging for people is it's very easy to set a goal, but sometimes it can be challenging to break that, to know how to get there. So setting a realistic goal and then breaking it down into smaller pieces, each of which is itself attainable. It can be really a concrete, helpful step to doing so. Tracking, as John said, monitoring the progress. And then I would encourage you to reward yourself along the way. And even if it's simply taking a moment to be like joyful or proud of yourself, or high five, whatever it is that you're doing, those structures work really, really well. And I think the only other thing I would add, just to throw something else in there, is as we talked about, sleep is such a core foundation to all of this, that if you can add in healthy quality sleep, that'll just really be a foundation for achieving those goals as well.
Indeed. Yeah. So setting realistic goals, so be real, get enough sleep, and celebrate the small victories as we go along. It seems like that's the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm not sure if we have any audience questions. All right. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Super insightful session today, and thanks for submitting your questions as well. We got some really great ones here. And we always see you next time on our next AMA. We're trying to do kind of topic focused ones, so we're always happy to hear any input from the community on what topics you would like us to cover next. Thanks everyone.
Thank you all.
Have a great Christmas.
Cheers.